Hi Jay, thanks for the footage and thanks for making contact via Facebook, YouTube, etc. Hope you're well. Just a quick look at the setup before we go on to the further details on the swing. But the guys at GolfTech are great at what they do. Nick Clearwater is the sort of head of instruction, has a great background with stack and tilt. He spent a lot of time with Andy over the years, still helps out with the training over there. So obviously there's going to be a lot of similarities between GolfTech, stack and tilt, etc. The way it's taught, everything's going to be very, very similar. So the two fit sort of handling glove, which is why you're finding it nice and easy to sort of flip between the work that you're doing with your instructor and the work that you're doing via the sort of YouTube videos that I've got up there and other instructors. So great job thus far, great result on the handicap reduction. Just touching on some details relating to the shot pattern that you're experiencing at the moment. I'll go into the swing. I've got some lines on there already as a point of reference. But at setup, what I would say to you is, and these are things that I'm trying to read between the lines here, but these are things that will have been discussed with you at some point to help make the improvements that have already been made in your game. But you're in danger of, in my opinion, overdoing one or two pieces here. So first and foremost, we've got relatively high handle location now. As a baseline, the handle should be pointing towards the belt line. That would be the baseline model position, if you will. The higher the handle sits, the easier it is for the player to hit out at the ball through impact. The lower the handle sits, the easier it would be to get the player to come across the ball through impact. So the handle location, when viewed from down the line, is a variable that you can use as and when you see fit. So if you've got a player who historically would come across the golf ball, hit a cut, and wanted to move to a more right shifted draw pattern, raising the handle would be a valid piece. Personally, I don't like seeing players move too much more, not in the real world, different when you're doing a drill, but in the real world I don't really like seeing the player move much more than an inch above or below that baseline, which is at the belt. It just makes for too big a change in regards to the swing direction and the subsequent moves that you've got to make to hit some sort of tight shot pattern. So not having the handle quite as high would help. You've also got the ball quite a distance back. Excuse the buzzing behind, that's just someone trying to escape the golf club. You've also got the ball quite a way back in the stance for a 4-iron, which again is great for hitting sort of down and out. One of the problems is when you have the ball so far back, it's very difficult to keep the lead wrist flat through the hit, because you're going to drive the ball out too low, so you're almost trying to satisfy the trajectory. You run the risk of the shaft backing up through impact. So even though the ball's back and the handle's forward at setup, you may end up at impact with a handle that's further back than it was and a club that's overtaking too fast. So again, handle up, ball back, these are things that you would give a player at some point during the process. But for me, looking at this, the camera angle's a little bit off. Next time you send some footage, if you can try and get it, I know it's not easy sometimes, if you can try and get it sort of directly face on, and when you're viewing from down the line, if you can have the camera in line with the stance line, looking down the line, rather than what looks like to be more sort of in line with the target line on the down the line footage. So camera angle's a little bit off, could be a little bit misleading, but the general sort of gist is still the same. Ball's a little bit too far back, so even though you're pulling the golf ball, I would be looking at getting some loft on the golf club at setup. So if you take the line straight down from that left shoulder, that would be your 0 point, and I would be looking to have the ball with a 4-iron positioned somewhere between, we've got 0 point, maybe 1 to 2 balls back, maybe 2 balls back of that 0 point, which would produce a little bit less shaft lean. The butt of the club would still be in line with sort of left hip area, a little bit less shaft lean, a little bit less of a swing direction to the right, which would require you to do a little bit less face closure. A lot of guys who struggle with listening to your commentary when you're hitting the shots and looking at your swing, it looks like it's going to be more of a deflected draw. So ball starts left and maybe curves left. You don't give the impression that you're going to hit a straight pull. And a lot of it you may do, but you don't give that impression. Like I say, I'm limited to what I can see and do online. But a lot of guys who struggle with that are because of the issues I've just gone over with you at setup. Everything's a little bit too prone to, you become too good at hitting down, hitting out, shifting the swing to the right. And as a result, the only way you can bring that ball back to the target is by closing the face down quickly through impact. With yourself, we also add to that, you've got quite a strong grip. So pressure point 3, which is the base of the right index finger, is a little bit under the shaft. I'd look at getting rid of, when you look at your grip, I'm just going to zoom in, your left thumb is visible. The next bit of footage that I see, or the next time you're practicing, imagine I'm sat there and you should be hiding your left thumb from view. So there's no way an instructor should be able to see your left thumb when you're hitting. That's going to require you to make some changes in the way you grip the club, i.e. you're going to have to get a little bit more in the fingers of your right hand to allow you to move that right hand over a little bit and bring the pressure point, rather than being very much underneath the grip, having it a little bit more on the side of the grip. So the base of the right index finger a little bit more on the side of the grip. That's going to be a result of you getting rid of that left thumb. So setup, handle maybe not quite as high, ball not quite as far back, and just soften up the grip ever so slightly. So if we've got a very high handle and a ball that's back allied to a strong grip, we've got to work pretty hard not to hit that ball to the left. So that would be my main concern. You may not notice this in your shorter irons because you're making a more passive attack at it. You don't push up at the ground quite as quick, rate of closure is never as high. And you may not notice it with your driver, because with a driver the ball's on the tee and you will instinctively start to move the ball up nearer to this 0 point, which rather than having the swing directed way over to the right will start to bring that round. So you're tending with this sort of issue to notice it more with your longer clubs off the ground, i.e. your 4-iron, rescue clubs, maybe even fairway woods at a push. So if we take a little look, I'm just going to get rid of a few of those lines at the overall action. Like I say, the guys that you've been working with doing a great job, wouldn't expect anything else from the Goaltech guys. Setup we've been through, a few little adjustments to that. P1 to P2. Pretty nice, left shoulder works down, hands work in. Right arm starting to bend, elevating the club, left shoulder continues to work down. You see the action of the head works sort of down a little bit from P1 to P4. That's you perhaps overdoing the left tilt. So if you've worked sort of quite hard on getting this left shoulder to work down and across, left knee flexing forward, you could just ease up on that. I'm not saying stop doing it, but sort of de-emphasize that during the backswing so that the rate at which you left tilt is not quite as severe. Just going to put the box around your head, P4, and a line behind your hips at P4. Now you can see as you go from P4 to P7, the head comes up and back quite quickly. As the head comes up and back, that's the extension piece. We don't really get back into flexion quite as well as we could, so we could use the ground better. The extension piece is moving the arms out and away from you through the hip, which allows you to close the club face down faster than you would normally do. You can see what I was saying about your setup. We just miss P7 on the face on view, but you can see from sort of 6.5 to 7.2, the club overtakes the hands pretty quickly. That's you looking for some loft on the less lofted fairway clubs. When you do that, you can shift the swing to the left a fraction. You can also close the club face. The act of doing that may occasionally close the club face down too fast. Could be one or the other, any combination of the two. When viewed from face on, the player who is pushing up and pulling the chest away from the ball too fast tends to release the angle in the wrists too quick. So when you look at it at 5.5, 5.2 maybe, instead of having a sort of nice amount of hinge in the wrists, we're starting to throw the angles away a little bit too quick. So at P6, the butt of the club is a little bit too far away from the right thigh. We want to move the butt of the club down and across to that right thigh a little bit, which will help with strike and will also help with the rate at which the club is passing your hands. You can see down the line the wrist angles are coming out pretty quick. By the time you get here, accumulator 2 has already started to get dumped. Too much too soon. And by the time you get just before impact, accumulator 2 is pretty much fully unloaded. So that's the wrists. Wrists are pretty much fully unloaded. And you have to, the more you pull the chest away from the ball, the more you've got to release accumulator 2 to expand the radius of the swing. So this is a sort of a double-edged sword, if you will. It's a chicken and egg situation. Does the player pull the chest away and therefore dump the wrist angles? Or does the player dump the wrist angles and therefore have to pull the chest away? At the end of the day, you've got to work on both aspects. You may feel one more than the other, but they do, like I said before, they fit hand in glove, and they will definitely calm down the rate at which your club closes down through the ball. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a drill up for you that I'd like you to spend some time doing. I'd like you to make some address changes, 100%. So hand a little bit lower, right hand a little bit more neutral, not quite as underneath and as strong, ball a little bit further forward. They are very important changes at setup that you need to make in regards to the overall shot pattern. In regards to the swing, I'd like you to approach this more by way of a conditioning exercise. Don't expect to get this change in there straight away, but rather work towards improving the area that I'm going to discuss with you gradually. So the more you do the drill, the more you will start to make the change that we want to make during the downswing. So during the downswing, we want to tighten the radius progressively from P4 to P5, and then we want the radius to expand gradually from P5 to P7. So you can see when you do that, Grant's demonstrating that beautifully on the right hand side. The wrist angles are maintained in the early portion of the downswing. The left shoulder stays down in the early portion of the downswing as the weight moves forward. Then as the right arm starts to expand and the wrist angles start to diminish slightly, the player's chest isn't coming up very quickly. It's coming up gradually through the hip, but not very quickly. So this is pre-impact. This is sort of from P5. For you in particular, it's from P5 to P7. The quicker the wrist angles come out, the more the player has to pull the chest away from the ball to prevent hitting it heavy. Or conversely, the quicker the chest pulls away from the ball, the more the player has to uncock the wrists in order not to thin or top the golf ball. Whenever the wrist angles come out, so the more the wrist angles uncock, the greater potential for closure you have on the club face. And that would explain the sort of pull shot that you're getting and your inability to sort of control that shot, sometimes despite what you do. So we want this radius to be narrower for longer, allowing you to stay down into the shot a little bit longer. And I'm just going to leave that position there now. So when you're cataloguing this and when you're working on this with the guys at Golf Tech, we want to see this, the butt of the club on the right thigh at P6. It can be just on. Grant's demonstrating this beautifully on this one. It doesn't have to be as centered as that. Anywhere on the right thigh at P6, you can see that there's a marked difference between where you and Grant would be at that point. So what I'm going to do now is show you a student working on this during a session. Okay, so here we have Neil coming in at P6, doesn't quite get the radius tight enough, and the club passes the hands a little bit too fast. Neil's got a beautiful overall action, but would tend to just catch his shots a little bit heavy, plays off handicap of 2, radius gets a little bit too wide, a little bit too soon, wrist angles start to come out a little bit too fast, and then in Neil's case, he doesn't really pull the chest away fast enough, low points back, and overtaking rate's a little bit too high. So even though it's a good looking swing, he struggles with timing issues on the shorter shots. So what we're doing here is the drill that I want you to try and work on for me. Neil's taking his setup first on his object ball, which is the front ball. There is a ball positioned about a grip's length behind the ball that Neil's going to then hit. He then takes his address position to the rear ball. Now, if the wrist angles come out too fast, the angle of attack is going to be too shallow and the back ball is going to be hit. So this drill encourages the player to narrow the radius or tighten the radius during the downswing, just courtesy of conditioning and an awareness, without you thinking too much. So backswing doesn't really change a great deal. When we're doing this drill, we only really need to swing back to left arm parallel. And then the sensation then is that the wrist angles are maintained for longer. See how much more advanced the butt of the club is getting now compared to his previous footage. Let's get that previous footage up for you. So at P6, Neil was on the right thigh. You are outside and above the right thigh. But very quickly, within one shot, Neil's moved the butt of the club further forward. So the release point now is much more in line with the golf ball that he's going to hit. And the shaft is less vertical at impact. As Neil comes through the shot, instead of the club passing the hands, the lead wrist stays flatter for longer, as opposed to the lead wrist cupping slightly through the hit. It's a flatter condition through the hit. Whenever you do that, you're going to keep the club face a little bit more stable and you're going to be able to control the direction of your shot. So I'm just going to get that drill back for you again and just play it through in real time. You're going to get your P6 up at the side of him. Remember, this drill it's a very extreme feel to it. We've got the wrist angles coming out too fast, chest pulling away from the golf ball, club passing hands too quick through the hit. P6 is where we want to try and improve it. Ball back in the stance. So we're going to set up to the front ball first, get the setup right, get the posture right, get the weight location right. We're then going to put the club in behind the back ball. The back ball should be approximately one grip away from the golf ball that you're hitting. You're then going to swing back to P3, left arm parallel with the ground, and strike the front ball. This will encourage you to keep the weight forward, keep the left shoulder down, keep the angles in the wrist, and present a flatter lead wrist at impact, and slow down the rate at which the club passes the hands. Looking at your action and sort of reading, the email that you sent me originally about the standard of golf that you're playing, you need to work on things that condition the changes that you want. So practice in an environment that never allows you to dump the angles too fast, that never requires you to or encourages you to pull the chest away from the ball too quick. If you practice in that manner, this is going to work its way into your game gradually. Remember, we're working on the downswing. Things happen at speed. Therefore, to try and consciously think about things during the downswing can be counterproductive. I'd much rather see you practice in a manner that conditions what you're trying to do. So a little bit of a change at setup, or a few little changes at setup, and a little bit of work on tightening the radius of the swing. And then what I'd strongly suggest then is a little bit of footage of you doing the drill. When you're doing the drill, try to do the drill with a sort of 8 or a 7 iron. Don't do it with a long iron. Spend a little bit of time doing the drill and then go away and hit some shots. When you hit your normal shots, just do what you've been doing, same feels. The work that the lads have been doing with you has been great, but we just want this radius tightening and the rate of closure calming down. That, allied to the tweaks at setup, should make for some really good ball striking days. If you can send me a little bit of footage of yourself doing the drill, just for a comparison, I'll do you a quick top up, courtesy of Facebook or Twitter on that, courtesy of Facebook or email, sorry, on that one. And then in 3 or 4 weeks' time, just before the start of the season, certainly in the UK, send me some more footage across and we'll do another online lesson for you. Good luck with it. If you've got any questions, feel free to email me at any time. Don't stand on ceremony. I would rather you ask the question than let it fester and potentially lead to further problems, further down the road. So any questions, just ask them. Good luck with it, and look forward to watching this one progress in the coming months.